I don't feel like what we passed out last week had any semblance of good governance. It was an artificial deadline created by some staffer in the White House who probably wanted the signature to happen while the rockets' red glare were bursting in air. Look, we could have probably taken 10 days and fixed this bill and had the president have a highly successful bill.
Do you think the people in that trailer park, do you think that they understand what's in that bill and how it could impact them?
They don't, but they will. They'll be targeted, and they should be. I mean, if I were...
targeted politically, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, they will find a way in today's world. You can find those folks, and if you're a competent Democrat, you're going to figure out a way to communicate to them how that affects their lives, and it almost certainly will. If it's that trailer park or the one that I spent a little bit of time in Jacksonville, Florida, or challenged communities across the country, that was the point. The House bill I had no problem with. And I actually had sympathy with some of our dead hawks, of which I am one, to say I think we should cut more. I think we should find $200 billion more in savings for $1 trillion, just not in this way, because it's not sustainable and it's politically, I think it's politically just devastating.
When you told that to the president, what did he say?
I think he probably heard it, maybe resonated with it. I was told by more than one person that he preferred the House bill more, but there's no question the Democrats are going to say that he broke his promise and that Medicaid recipients are going to be at risk. But he's got people that are giving him bad advice that are around him every day, and I continue to say, look, you got people here. I have a vested interest in making sure that President Trump's the most successful Republican president in the history of this country. I was a Republican long before President Trump was, and I'll be a Republican for the rest of my life. I built a majority in North Carolina. I want to see that that successful streak and all the benefits that have occurred in North Carolina occur and continue. And so you have to be able to tell truth to power. That's our job. And that's exactly what I attempted to do last week, and that's what I'll continue to do. And I'll continue to work with the president if he chooses to. I'm a transaction guy. Completely believe they missed the mark on this one. His advisors got it wrong. Off to the next transaction. Let's fix this or work on something else. There are plenty of things where we agree.
The Wall Street Journal reported that when he made his final pitch to you, you said, I can't effing do that.
No, it sounds like me, but I don't remember the conversation at that level of granularity. But I made it very clear to the president and I have never had a pitched discussion. Every time, and I've probably done it more than many, every time I'm very frank with him, but he has never been untoward, never raised his voice.
He just goes on social media and does it.
Yeah, well, that's the first time he ever did. And so after he did that, after I told the president that he's clearly got the votes, that I will try and work to get something done in the House. He didn't need my vote, and that I would be respectful and quiet and try to do my work on the House side. And then I got that text that I texted him, or I saw I'd never read it, but I saw like the first sentence. I told the president in another text, I said, now it's time to start looking for my replacement because I don't deal with that kind of bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And what did he say to that?
He texted back, I am, and I think subsequent to that, he started taking interviews. He needs to, because it's going to be a tough race in North Carolina. We got to get a good candidate, and I'm committed to helping the president get that candidate elected. If it's not, well, let's say, a handful of people that will never make it in a general election in North Carolina.
Yeah, well, you've talked about the lieutenant governor, the former lieutenant governor, Mark Robinson, who has a lot of baggage, a lot of weird stuff.
He's still got Mini Soldier out there. For
Mini Soldier, his porn avatar name or whatever, allegedly. President Trump endorsed him last time, loved him. He's very pro-Trump. What happens if Trump gets behind him?
I think it'd be devastating. And if you noticed, before the revelations of Mini Soldier and everything came out, Mark Robinson was not on the stage any longer. So I think the president probably got the right intel that it was not a good idea to call him Martin Luther King ×2. He is a disgrace to Martin Luther King's legacy, and there's no way if he became the nominee in North Carolina I could possibly support him. Of course, I wouldn't support the Democrat nominee. I would just have to take a pass.
What if it were Laura Trump? There's talk of her running.
They've all got to decide. You know, our state is very difficult for Republicans to win. In both cases, I've won by fewer than 2 points. So they need to be really smart about the name on the ballot and the profile on the ballot to have an opportunity to win. It would have been a very difficult race for me. You know, Jake, you've been following elections a lot longer than I have. On election day, I've never been closer than 2 points behind my opponent, and we pulled it out in both cases. But this is going to be a tough race for someone. They need a good, solid business, right-of-center conservative to match up against whoever it is, and now it looks like it may be Governor Cooper.
Governor Cooper, who's pretty popular, two-term governor, managed to have a decent profile in North Carolina and leave the state pretty popular.
Yeah.
You were talking about the difficulties of being a Republican in this era. A columnist in the Carolina Journal wrote about you. Tillis has been one of the few elected officials on Capitol Hill in recent years who has demonstrated a willingness to stand up for the legislative branch. The story surrounding his departure from Congress is unlikely to encourage others to step into that role.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a good example last week. And let's, before we start, I have to say the Democrats have a far worse rap sheet than Republicans when it comes to defending this institution. I only have to point to nuking the filibuster and thank God that we had Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema there to save the chamber.
No longer here.
No, and these folks now are using as a litmus test for primaries, would you nuke the filibuster? But now Republicans are starting to take that bait. I am here to defend the Article 1 branch and to collaborate with the Article 2 branch, more so when there's a Republican in there, maybe a little less so when there's a Democrat, but still I've managed to do bipartisan work when Biden was in office. But at the end of the day, I'm an institutionalist, and it's remarkable to me how I hear all of these self-avowed institutionalists rationalize why they wouldn't vote for the amendment last week for John Kennedy to simply say, if we're going to give the president $1 billion a year to spend on defense production, shouldn't there actually be a consultation with Congress before it's spent? And we had dozens of our members vote against it because the president rightfully wanted it. So I don't mind the tug and pull. I think the president would be wrong if he wasn't trying to make his branch as powerful as possible. By the same token, it's our job to maintain the historic intent of the Article 1 branch.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to be dogmatic about that because I really believe that it's what has made this country so special.
Do you think that the lesson for the Republican Party right now is fall in line behind President Trump or get out of Congress?
No, look, I don't want. I made a personal decision that it wasn't an in a moment decision.
You had made the decision before all this happened with the bill.
I started a process of what I described to many of my donors and supporters of confirmatory due diligence back in January and February when I said I've got to convince myself that this transaction of being involved in the most expensive race in U.S. history again, that it's worth doing and that there is a path to winning. And I felt like I needed to determine whether or not I could raise the money that was necessary for my campaign. I needed to determine if we were going to have a going concern in terms of governing over a reasonable period of time so that I could then determine if the environment of the election, if those two things were in place, knowing that it was likely going to be a negative environment because of the historic trend of the party in power in the White House having headwinds, then I was going to make a decision probably more in the September timeframe. But it just seemed like in the moment, I don't feel like what we passed out last week had any semblance of good governance. It was an artificial deadline created by some staffer in the White House who probably wanted the signature to happen while the rockets' red glare were bursting in air, that vision on July 4th. There was nothing in that deadline that had anything to do with a Senate priority. I have said, look, we could have probably taken 10 days and fixed this bill and had the president have a highly successful bill. But you got staff over there that are so obsessed with making the date that they don't care about the outcome. They just care about checking the box. And that's what I've continued to tell the president he needs to be wary of.